All right, it is 7 o'clock, and this meeting is hereby called to order. We have the presence of a quorum attending by video conference. Notice of this meeting has been posted online for at least 72 hours. On March 16, 2020, Governor Greg Abbott granted a request by Attorney General Ken Paxton to temporarily suspend a limited number of open meetings laws to the extent necessary to allow telephonic and video conference meetings in response to the coronavirus COVID-19. In accordance with those suspended rules, the board certifies the following. Although members of the board are not gathered in a central physical location, we do have a quorum in attendance at this meeting by video conference. This meeting is being held by video conference because the convening at one location of a quorum of the governmental body is not appropriate during the COVID-19 public health emergency. Based on current guidance from federal, state, and county authorities concerning large gatherings and social distancing during the COVID-19 public health emergency, there is no established location for an audience to observe the meeting. However, the live meeting is accessible through both a district link and YouTube link, which were timely and appropriately provided to the public and media as part of the meeting posting through a news release via the district website. As we would at any in-person meeting, members of the public who have followed the standard instructions for registering to speak during the public comment portion will be allowed 5 minutes to speak. All other meeting procedures will adhere to the board-adopted procedures to the extent practicable. A video recording of this meeting is being made and will be available in the public on the district's website. At this time, we will open the meeting with a moment of silence to observe as you feel appropriate. I would also like to extend our appreciation to our students, parents, and staff for all that they're doing during this time. Would you please stand and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. Okay. At this time, we would have audience to the patrons, but at 6:30, no one had requested, so we will move forward. I'm going to move forward now with the approval of our minutes from March 19th, 2020. I do need to hear a motion to approve the minutes, and when you make the motion, would you state your name?
Catherine Kaminsky. I make the motion to approve the minutes.
Catherine Kaminsky makes the motion. Do I have a second?
John Welch, I second that.
John Welch seconds. No, is there any discussion? If not, we will have a roll call vote by saying yay or nay. Trustee Bronzell? I didn't hear. Did she say yay? Trustee Bronzell?
Yes.
Okay. Trustee Hubenek?
Yes.
Trustee Hunt?
Yes.
Trustee Kaminsky?
Yes.
Trustee Welch?
Yes.
Trustee Williams?
Yes.
And myself, yay. So the motion passes. Thank you. All right, let's move forward to board reports. Do we have any board members that have a meeting or event they would like to share at this time? No one? Well, I'm just going to say again, thank you to yesterday. Dr. Randall participated in, I guess, the forum with other superintendents, with KP George and the county judge, and we thank him. And I think it was well received. I think they had about 1,000 people listening in. So thank you, Dr. Randall, for participating in that forum. Okay, at this time, Dr. Randall, do you have a report?
I do not have any reports, Madam President.
All right. Then let's move forward with our consent agenda. Now is the part of our meeting that we form a consent agenda. I will identify each action item by letter and number. If there is any trustee who would like to pull an item from the consent agenda, please let me know. So the public is aware, I want to share that the trustees had the opportunity to deliberate on all action items during a virtual workshop meeting held this past Tuesday evening. Interested members of the public can find a video recording of the workshop meeting online at the district's website. I will now go through the action items, and please, if you need for me to pull, let me know. All right, we will start with goal A, A1, A2,
I'd like to have that pulled. Joy,
A3,
I'd like to have that pulled as well.
okay, B1,
I'd like to pull that.
B2, B3, B4, B5, B6, B7, B8, B9, B10,
I'd like to pull that.
B11, B12, B13, B14, B15, B16, B17, B18, B19, B20, B21,
Let's pull that one.
C1, C2, D1, D2. So I'm going to go back through and make sure I have pulled the correct agenda item. We have our consent agenda. On the consent agenda, we will have goal A1, B2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, B11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, B17, 18, 19, 20, C1, C2, D1, D2. If that is correct, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, and please state your name?
Alex Hunt, I move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, Alex Hunt moves to approve. Do I have a second?
Catherine Kaminsky, second.
Catherine Kaminsky seconds it. Is there any discussion? If not, I will now call the roll so each member can state his or her vote. Trustee Bronzell,
Yes.
Trustee Hubenek,
Yes.
Trustee Hunt,
Yes.
Trustee Kaminsky,
Yes.
Trustee Welch,
Yes.
Trustee Williams,
Yes.
and Board President Danziger, yes. So the motion passes. Thank you. Before we go to our pulled action items, I'd like to circle back to our resolutions. We do resolutions every month before certain events. And next month, we will be celebrating Public School Paraprofessionals Day, School Nurses Week, and Teacher Appreciation Week. And whether we're virtually there or physically there, I think all these groups need to be recognized and given great admiration for what they do. So at this time, will Ms. Bronzell, you want to read about Public School Paraprofessionals Day?
Yes. Whereas public school paraprofessionals are valuable members of educational teams in classrooms, gymnasiums, libraries, with special education students, and more. Whereas public school paraprofessionals contribute in many ways beyond their most recognizable functions. And whereas the assistance of public school paraprofessionals is particularly important in the daily activities and operations of a school district. And whereas public school paraprofessionals serve our educational community by providing support for students and staff. And whereas public school paraprofessionals assist school and district personnel as trusted communicators with parents and community members. And whereas the connection of public school paraprofessionals to the community aids in communication and positive public relations within the community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Lamar Consolidated Independent School District declares May 13th, 2020 as Public Paraprofessionals Day and encourages all members of our staff and community to express appreciation to our public school paraprofessionals.
Thank you. Now, Ms. Kaminsky, you would please read about School Nurses Week?
Yes, ma'am. Whereas school nurses play a critical role in the educational process through involvement in the prevention of illness and the early detection and correction of health problems. And whereas school nurses must be specially prepared and qualified to practice preventive health measures, assess health conditions, and handle referrals. And whereas school nurses serve the multiple roles of health educator and health counselor to children and families, resource person to classroom teachers and administrators, child advocate in times of crisis, and liaison among home, school, and community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Lamar Consolidated Independent School District declares the week of May 6th through the 12th, 2020 as School Nurses Week and encourages all members of our staff and community to express appreciation to our school nurses, adopted this 16th day of April, 2020.
Thank you, Ms. Kaminsky. Mr. Hunt, will you please read about Teacher Appreciation Week?
Sure. Whereas today's teachers mold our future citizens through their guidance and education, and whereas today's teachers encounter students of widely differing backgrounds and abilities, and whereas our society expects public education to provide quality education services to all children, no matter what their background or ability, and whereas our country's future depends on the education our youth receive today, and whereas teachers spend countless hours outside their classrooms preparing lessons, evaluating progress, counseling and coaching students, and performing community service, and whereas our community recognizes that its teachers are providing quality educational services to our children, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Lamar Consolidated Independent School District declares the week of May 4th through 8th, 2020 as Teacher Appreciation Week and calls on the community to join with us in personally expressing appreciation to our teachers for a job well done.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. And I think this year, I think a lot of people know how well that we appreciate our teachers. So we're going to move forward now to circle back to the agenda items we pulled. The first one we pulled was A2, and I need a motion that the Board of Trustees approve a resolution modifying the final ranking and honors requirements of Board Policy EIC Local for the graduating class of 2020. Do I hear a motion? And please state your name when you make the motion.
Make the motion, Bronzell.
All right. Do I hear, Ms. Bronzell, do I hear a second?
Second that,
William.
John.
Oh, okay. Mr. Welch seconds it. So now let's have discussion. Who had, I think it was Ms. Williams, you pulled this. Did you still have some questions?
Y'all mentioned on Tuesday that this would be a good time to get any kind of updates on possible graduation and prom, any updates that we had.
Dr. Randall?
I am on here, but my video for some reason is not coming. Okay, excuse me. Graduation questions and just an update on the direction we are heading within graduation services at this time. Currently, right now, we're hoping, obviously the governor is set to make some determinations, we think, tomorrow. But currently, right now, if that doesn't occur, we do have some holding dates at the Merrill Center for the end of June. We're also looking at virtual learning, or excuse me, a virtual graduation and options of possibly looking at virtual graduations. We're also looking at signages and opportunities to honor all of our senior class, signages or trinkets or somehow to try to make this time period very special for our kids at this point.
Thank you for that update.
Are there any other questions or discussion? I see Ms. Bronzell.
Yes, I know that we went through this, but I'm wondering if we can go through just a couple of questions that have surfaced that I think we did cover, but I'd like for you to cover them for me because you do a much better job at it than me. So bear with me while I go through these. The first one is regarding valedictorian and salutatorian. Please explain how that's going to be decided because there's a lot of questions about that.
Okay, for our high school seniors, traditionally we have looked at the 4th and the 5th average, and that was what would be the pull for balance out. Because of COVID-19, we are not looking at the 5th 6-week period, and we will pull only up to the 4 6 weeks period, and that will determine the balance out 10% and 25%.
Okay. We have several parents that don't like the way that's being done, but I said that I would bring it up tonight just to bring it up so you can explain it.
The other part to that, Ms. Bronzell, is that when you pull it at the 4 6 weeks, number one, that the seniors definitely knew at the 4th and the 5th 6 weeks that there was a potential that that average would count. But it also shows on their transcript of classes a true representation when you start looking at second semester classes such as government or economics. And so it's an entire collection of their classes as well.
Okay. I think this is kind of along that same line. This was still feel like taking the grades only from halfway point of the year and putting towards their GPA on their college application without giving them a chance to bring it up is going to hurt them.
Okay, that without the chance to bring up their 4 6 weeks grade?
I guess that was it.
They had 2 weeks at the 5th 6 weeks. We're going to provide the opportunity, obviously, for the 5th 6 weeks, but we were within 2 weeks of the 5th 6 weeks. And so teachers closed out the grades the Monday after that grading cycle was done. And so we do feel that kids did receive enough opportunity to ensure that they had any redo at that point, and the 2 weeks before spring break where we were in normal business, where we felt that there would be limited negative impact as a result of that.
But kids that had, I know we had some kids that had UIL events and they missed their assignments because they were right before spring break. They will be given the opportunity to make those up, correct?
Absolutely. In the 5th 6 weeks, absolutely. We are providing that last week or the 2 weeks that they were in session for that progress report time. They would have the opportunity at that point. The other kids, for seniors, we're going to be pulling it at the 4 6 weeks and not the 5th 6 weeks.
So they don't even need to worry about if they miss something as a senior in that.
Well, I wouldn't say not worry about it because we're still dealing with the credit situation.
Okay, so that's
Though we're not pulling GPA, we're still trying to ensure that we have the correct information so that we can honor credit for all of our kids at the high school level.
okay. And then can you explain how class rank is going to be done again? Because there was questions about that.
Okay. Traditionally, it's been pulled in the average of the 4th and the 5th 6 weeks. We have done that. Okay. And so because of COVID in that the 5th 6 weeks, we only had that 2 weeks, which we're going to allow them to make that up, but it was not a full cycle. we're only going to pull it at the 4-6 weeks. So it would be the average of their GPA up through that 4-6 weeks, and that is going to determine that Val and Sal honor grads in that top 10%. I will tell you that when you begin to look historically, a lot of the GPA and those numbers stay pretty consistent from semester to 4-6 weeks for the majority of your very top tier class numbers.
Okay. I hope that our parents understand that we're doing the best that we possibly can. We're so thankful for the administration and the principals and the teachers and everything that they're doing to try to make this a seamless process. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to work the best that we can all make it work. Thank
Are there
you.
any other questions? I know I had a young man reach out to me and say, I always do better towards the end of the semester, not the beginning of the semester, and this is really going to hurt him. But that just tells me, okay, from now on, you're going to have to decide that you have to work all the way through, because you just never know what's around the corner that's going to disrupt that. So, but yes, again, just like Ms. Bronzell said, we know that you're doing the best you can to make it as fair as you can. And this is probably happening in all school districts throughout everywhere. And I know that the colleges are going to have to be more accepting of what comes on those transcripts.
Oh, absolutely. And you're seeing a lot of information from different colleges that are having to make some adjustments and possibly not counting some of the things they've traditionally counted, such as SAT, ACT. So you're definitely seeing them react currently right now to our reality.
All right, thank you. If there's no other questions, I'm going to go ahead and call for the vote, if that's all right with everyone else. So just again, that will be a roll call vote. Trustee Bronzell,
Yes.
Trustee Hubenek. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Trustee Hunt,
Yes.
Trustee Kaminsky,
Yes.
Trustee Welch,
Yes.
and Trustee Williams,
Yes.
and myself, yes. So the motion passes. So we've finished with action item A2. So now let's go on to A3, that the Board of Trustees approve a resolution modifying the guidelines for grading requirements in Board Policy EIA Local and promotion retention requirements in Board Policy EIE Local. Do I have a motion?
Kaminsky makes a motion to
To approve.
approve.
Ms. Kaminsky makes the motion. Do I have a second?
Ms. Williams can second.
Ms. Williams seconds. Now we can have discussion. Ms. Williams, you had some questions?
Dr. Mossage, do you mind if I read a little bit from the email, your email response to me today about elementary
No.
workload? Is that okay?
Yes.
I've had several questions about teachers feeling like their elementary students have had a rigorous homework. And so I reached out to Dr. Mossage, and she gave me a response. I just wanted to share that. So the grading policy for elementary outlines the following. The 6 minor grades will be recorded during the 9 weeks for each core subject. This is approximately 1 graded assignment per week per content area. No grades will be recorded for PE, art, or music. We will set the 6 minor grades as a maximum for the secondary level, but will allow for the 6 minimum grades in some elective classes. Our goal is to continue to deliver new learning and check understanding, but not to overwhelm the community. TEA requires us to have a process to progress monitor learning through the COVID-19 period, but our grading policy is a local decision. She says, I have attached the phase 2 expectation that has been provided to teachers. It outlines the following for amount of time for assignments. Implementation of phase 2 officially began on April 15th, which was yesterday. And it's quoted, teachers should consider the age of the student, and the amount of time required to complete each activity when building their weekly learning plan. Teachers cannot assign more than 30 minutes of work per day for students in each content or course. If the grading policy is approved, this will be communicated to our teachers ASAP. We have a follow-up meeting scheduled with our campus principals to ensure that they're monitoring the amount of work expected at both the elementary and secondary levels. Each teacher is turning in a weekly learning plan to campus administration, so it should be easy to make the necessary adjustments to limit the stress on our families. So I thought that was a really good response. So thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
I had a young lady reach out to me, and I wasn't quite sure what she meant, but she was worried about her GPA if we're not putting an actual grade. The assignments are satisfactory or in for needs improvement, but what goes actually on the transcript to average in? That will be a numerical grade, correct?
You're talking about the high school transcript, correct?
Correct.
Yes, that will be converted to, for kids, we will have the 4-6 weeks grade, which was already complete before we began. Then we'll have the progress report grade, where we're providing opportunities for kids to turn in any work that they had that they were missing at that 2-week period. And then for the 6 weeks, with the satisfactory in regard to the work that is being provided, those 6 assignments, and then needs improvement. Then at the end of that cycle, if the child met satisfactory performance, that would be considered 100, and a needs improvement at a 69. And there will not be any final exams at the second semester. And so those 3 grades will actually be averaged together to equate to their semester average at that time. And so that was where we also felt at that 6 weeks, a lot of our kids who are really working really hard on those 6 assignments that we're doing 30 minutes at max, and age appropriate at elementary school, but for high school, 30 minutes max as well. We felt that that would provide a lot of opportunities for kids to really even boost their grade at the 5th 6 weeks as well. And we kept that in our mind, knowing that this is a very stressful time for our community.
Well, and I did email her back and tell her if she could watch tonight. I don't know if she's being able to listen, but that's what I kind of said, that I felt like this, if she does her work by 100, averaging with, it's going to boost some GPAs.
Well,
Maybe.
It's not, we didn't want to harm any children.
Correct. But it's not going to hurt anybody either.
No, we're not going to run GPA for 9th, 10th, and 11th grade past the first semester.
Okay.
Because a lot of the kids began a second semester class in the 9th, 10th, and 11th grade at that 4-6 weeks. They're in a half semester class. So it's their first 6 weeks of a 3-6 weeks period.
Okay.
Traditionally, kids, when they start a semester class, particularly upper level classes, do not as often have as stellar of grades at the 4-6 weeks than they would have at the entire semester. Correct. That's why we moved for the first semester only GPA counting for for 9th through 11th grade, because it was a true representation of consistency at that time period.
So we're not doing anything to hurt any students' GPA because of this pandemic. Okay.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. We just need to ensure that we are providing for credits and work and verifying that we can award the credits in the work that they are providing to us.
To show the universities that, or wherever they go next, that they have completed the coursework.
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other questions, Mr. Hubenek? Did you? Yes, go ahead, Mr. Hubenek.
All right, so we got a few things. So if I read this right and I understand this correctly, we're using numerical grades up until the end of the 5th 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And then starting Monday, which is the 20th, we're going to go to the letter system.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So a couple things that was my question. A couple things that were brought up to me were students with modifications that can't be met with this method or style of learning. How are we approaching those? All on a one by one single case basis, or what's the thought?
Well, we have to follow their IEPs. And so we have to do the best that we possibly can to modify the work according to what has been stated within the ARD paperwork. And so if we're needing to revise something in some way, then we're having to amend the ARD to provide some different accommodations that would meet the situation at this time.
Right.
But the federal, when we look at federal guidelines, special education and modifications and trying to meet the kids according to what their IEP says is still current even in this time period.
Okay, but given this special set of circumstances that we're in, I would assume that we can't meet all of those with this method of learning, correct?
Correct. This is Tiffany Mathis. Basically, what will happen is once we reopen school, we will have to have ARD meetings for all of our students to determine if there was any regression and whether or not we need to provide any type of compensatory services.
So at that time, so it'll be undetermined until then whether or not that student may progress to the next grade?
No, sir. They still will have enough data. The ARD committee still meets to determine whether the student moves on to the next grade level or not. But we should not penalize students due to the pandemic. And so campuses have been given information regarding that. And again, the ARD committee still makes the decision.
Okay.
Let me add one thing, Mr. Ubanak, on that, is that when we talk about progress and we're having to monitor progress of those kids, if the child is not continuing to provide progress, and we're looking at our summer programs and how we can also support them throughout the summertime so that they're prepared going into the next year.
Gotcha. Thank you. Two more things. Second thing was that had a few, well, 3 or 4 parents and a few employees reach out to me that different campuses, and there seems to be some inconsistency with how these different campuses are rolling some of this out.
Okay.
We're trying to keep that as uniform as possible. I understand depending on the campus and the students that campus may particularly serve, it may be a little bit different. But as far as the whole thing is concerned, everything should be pretty uniform across the board, correct?
Yes, sir. As far as the teacher expectations and our grading policies, absolutely, yes. And then we would work with any school that we are, if there are some specific issues within that school, we can handle those directly. But we are in close conversations with our principals and trying to support that work and ensuring that we have a common message for all of our campuses so that there is consistency across the district with this.
Okay, and the last thing was I've had a few parents in the out of the Beasley Elementary. Few, it is rural outside of Beasley, and then into Kennelton, saying that they have no options out there as far as internet is concerned, other than hotspot, cellular hotspots. What are we doing for those? Because it seems like we still have a gap.
Okay. One of the things that we began, particularly with Kindleton, and what we've suggested with some of the principals, is that we could also email some of the materials in regard to teaching to the parents rather than the internet access at that point. What we also are looking at as we've moved into phase 2 is determining, we've already sent out some information to really look at specific kids that might need kind of a mail out or a distribution of paper-based, where it truly is a need, particularly in our rural areas, because we are aware that the geographical location of a lot of our schools can inhibit that. But we want to ensure that we're also doing it safely. And so we are currently working on that right now.
Okay. Yeah, that was my next question. If I know, hearing stuff from other districts that Needville, for example, was doing some sort of packet. I didn't know if that was a possible solution, but you answered that for me. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Sorry, I have one more.
Okay, go ahead.
I believe this is where I asked this last time. I think Dr. Maxwell answered this about the counseling situation for parents. I know he mentioned, I believe, that it was in Canvas, but I wanted to see if a parent did reach out to me about, like I said, getting some counseling help or like a telehealth conference as a parent, like not for the student necessarily. I wanted to see, and she did brag on her school about the counselor corner, I believe they call it, some email maybe with the principal. I'm not sure how it looks, but I wanted to see if we could, if there was a way to come up with something that directly is kind of, real clear for them, where they could reach out as a parent if they would like a telehealth, maybe with HGI. I don't know who all of that would involve, but if there's a way to get a free service like that where they wanted a phone call or a FaceTime and it could be confidential, maybe something like that, because she said that she really liked the counselor corner that her school does. And so I know that counselors are reaching out in different ways, but I thought if there was something that we could really put out there. I know it might be an awkward time or a situation for parents, because we're usually trying to calm the kids and not really asking for ourselves. And so if we could, and maybe somewhere really visible on our own LCISD page, just some free services that's not as much as of a drill down. And I don't know what that looks like, but those are a couple suggestions. So if we could initiate something like that where it was real obvious and they knew it was for the parents too, I'd like us to consider that if possible.
Ms. Williams, we do have some resources that we can provide, and I'll work with Dr. Mossage to ensure that we can possibly have those in a very visible space.
And I guess at elementary levels too, that might be the most needed. I don't know who needs it the most at this point, but
we have options. Yes, ma'am.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much.
Ms. Bronzell?
Yes, I know that we did discuss this before. I just wanted to reiterate that I hope that we let our teachers and our principals know to take it easy on some of these kids. It's tough, and I know my daughter has all AP classes and it's a lot of work. She's doing fine, but I know it's a lot of stress on a lot of kids, and especially at the elementary level too. We all know how hard it is. I never wanted to be a homeschool mom, and I'm doing it. So I'm sure that everybody kind of feels that way. So I just hope that we can make sure that our teachers and our administrators know that, some certain situations we need to really be understanding with our families.
We are definitely in a spot where we're really, our conversations have been to show grace and we will do no harm to the best of our ability, because we do realize that in our community, we're very stressed. There's a lot going on, and we're very cognizant of that. And we're here to support the community in anything that we can do through this process.
Thank you. And likewise, what we talked about before is our parents need to give some grace to our teachers also. It's a tough time all the way around.
Oh,
Mr. Hubenet?
Yeah, and to reiterate what Manny just said, I think we should probably take it easy on our teachers. We're asking them to do their job from home when they may have a house full of kids themselves, and all of us, I'm sure, now know how difficult it is to work from home when you've got kids coming in and out and distracting you and needing something, and there's an emergency every 20 minutes, and uncharted waters.
Yes.
Okay.
I know that we always give board recognitions, but we would probably want to give it to every one of our teachers who are out there trying to hold down the fort of their classrooms. Some have 22, some might have 120 kids, and plus have their own students. So this is a very stressful and anxious time all around. Thank you, Mr. Hubenek. Are there any other questions or comments for this?
Okay, I have some. One.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, teachers, we understand you have your hands full, but I don't want to forget the parents. We also know that this is very, very difficult on you, and I would just like to give them a thank you too for hanging in there. And I'm sure they're learning to appreciate their teachers in a lot of different ways. But I just want to know, we think about you too as parents, and give y'all a thank you, and just hang in there. We don't have much longer to go.
Well, if there's no other comments, I'm going to call for the vote, and it'll be another roll call vote. So, Ms. Bronzell,
Yes.
Mr. Trustee Hubenek? Yes. Trustee Hunt?
Yes.
Trustee Kaminsky?
Yes.
Trustee Welch? Yes. Did I? No.
Yeah.
Trustee, okay. I didn't see you. Trustee Williams?
Yes.
And myself, yes. So the motion passes. All right, we're now moving to the approval of the proposed dates for regular board meetings and workshops for the 2020-2021 school year. Can I hear a motion?
Kaminsky, I'll make a motion.
Ms. Kaminsky makes the motion. Do I hear a second? Mr. Hubenet makes the second. All right, do we have discussion? Mr. Welch, you pulled that one?
Yeah, if you all remember, I think it was in February, might have been March, I asked for the pros and cons from the administration's point of view to possibly stagger our workshop and board meeting to separate weeks, and possibly do that as a test run for the next school year for 2 or 3 months in a row. We got the pros and cons from the district, and now I'd like to know what my fellow board members think of that idea. Not necessarily for the entire 12-month period. I'm thinking like a September, October, and then we fall back for the rest of the year into this schedule. And that would give us an idea, did we enjoy the more interaction and the more time between the workshop and the meeting during those last 2 months, or does it not make a difference? So I'm asking my fellow board members what they think.
I'd like to refresh what the information was that was brought to us about the reasoning of the pros and cons. If Mr. Rockwood has that. That was in our last book. Yes.
Hello, can you hear me and see me?
We can see you.
Okay, good deal. Yeah, so there was an information item that Mr. Welch referenced on a previous board meeting, and there is no requirement to hold board workshops, and some school districts in Texas only hold board meetings. So after the district researched best practices, it was decided in 2004 to begin using board workshops to answer all of the questions that trustees might have at the same time frame so everyone could benefit. Extending the time between the workshop and the regular meeting would add to the monthly workload and planning of the staff. The staff blocks out the second week of the month for the preparation of the board agenda and the third week for the board workshop and the board meeting. The administration has found this schedule to be beneficial because it allows them to plan meetings and other activities on the first and fourth weeks of the month, and this keeps the focus on instructional improvement and efficient operations. We're grateful for the board for allowing the staff to focus on improving the academic success of students. Under the current arrangement, the administration believes there is appropriate time to support the campuses and provide the needed professional development on that first and fourth week time frame while remaining responsive to our school board trustees. And that was an excerpt from the board agenda item.
I had you freeze up. My internet connection went goofy a few minutes there, but I got most of that. Is there anybody else that has a comment about that or a question? Ms. Bronzell?
I don't have a question. I think what Trustee Welch is suggesting, just to try it for a couple of months would be fine. In my opinion, it would be fine to do something like that, but you know, I'm open for discussion.
Kay?
Yes, go ahead.
I thought about this too, but as Mike was saying that the administration has to schedule a lot of their meetings and their training and just a lot of things. And I thought about it too, that I block out 1 week for school board. And if we changed it, then I would have to block out 2 weeks for meetings. And so my preference would be to leave it as it is, because I really don't have that much on my agenda. I don't have that much room to take 2 weeks to have meetings. That's my opinion.
Is there anyone else that has a question or comment about this possibly changing when our board workshops are?
Would there be appropriate months that wouldn't be as difficult to do the test run of the year? Like, I know we have 3 meetings in August, so that might be a tough one. I think Mr. Welch mentioned September and October. So if we just want to try it, what would that look like? A Thursday and then the next Thursday, and so like the 3rd and the 4th week, so the 1st and 2nd week we're still left open for meetings and schedules, that type of thing? Or what was the suggestion?
I know that in October is going to be October 2nd through the 4th is the TASB convention, if we're still having it. That's in Dallas in October. So that would be, I think I understand what you're saying, that you want more time to be able to go through the material and have questions over it. But my concern is, I do know that some of our information and some things that get into our board book are being put in there very last minute. And I would worry that we wouldn't be able to, I don't know. I guess my concern is, unless we finally would do it and continually doing it, we wouldn't get into a rhythm. Either we would be taxing the administration to get things out before they're ready, or we wouldn't be able to approve things on a month that we needed to have it approved, and we'd have to push it to the next month because they wouldn't have it ready for our board book. And I guess was my concern when I was listening to the pros and cons. If we approved this tonight and decided to go the other direction in the future, we could bring it back to another as an item to change it for a short period of time. Once the administration can maybe look and see when's the best time for them to be able to try this process. Thoughts?
So you're saying decide to put it as an agenda item once they come up with that information?
Pass this tonight, but then once the administration could maybe, if this is something that a majority of you would like to see happen, then they could come back to us and say, you know, if you want to try this, here's a good month to try it for a couple of months. I'm not sure the beginning of the year is so great, because that's when we're trying to get the schools opened and we're trying to pass the budget and everything, but maybe so. I don't know. This would be something that the administration would have to figure out when would be the best time to try something like this, so that we're not overtaxing them too.
Okay, I think in Dr. Rockwood's statement earlier, he added that this would be an extra workload on the administrators. And I think we need to keep that in mind because we're having difficulty just now trying to figure out what months we might be able to even try this. So I think that would be an example of 2 weeks instead of a 1 week concentration.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have a comment or question? Mr. Humanek, were you?
I'm not opposed to doing a trial, but at the same time, I know, like you said, a lot of the items that we have on the agenda are time sensitive, and given the situation we're in currently, I know the staff is even busier. So I suggest leaving it on voting, but leaving it on the table as a discussion at some later point once we get past this pandemic stage, to maybe discuss and insert somewhere down the line.
So you're saying go ahead and leave it as is, and then if we want to come back and revisit it during this year, once things settle down a little bit, we can. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. Anyone else with a question or comment? Okay, can I call for the vote then? Okay. All right, I'm calling for the vote, please. Say yay or nay. Trustee Bronzell?
Yes.
Trustee Hubenek?
Yes.
Trustee Hunt?
Yes.
Trustee Kaminsky?
Yes.
Trustee Welch?
I'm going to abstain on this. I don't feel passionate about it either way, but I'm going to abstain.
Okay. And Trustee Williams?
Yay.
Yay? Okay.
Yay.
Yay. All right, the motion passes. I believe we're going to move down to B10. On this one, it's a discussion. We don't have to make a motion, I believe, if that's right, Dr. Randall? If we just want to discuss the master plan?
That's correct. Only if there were changes or something along those lines that you would want to make. So it's there for possible discussion on the part of the board if you choose to do so.
All right. So I know we brought up at the board workshop the other day of possibly changing some numbers for the elementary. I didn't know if anyone had crunched any numbers of what this would cost, or have we gone into that enough to even do that yet?
I think that the staff began to look at that. This particular item, Ms. Danziger, is a pretty complex item. When you start talking about the master plan principles, they are designed to give kind of an overview of what the board thinks about what facilities should look like. Oftentimes, if you were getting ready to add and make campuses larger, typically we've often even asked community for feedback on that. So the process in and of itself is not just a matter of adding 25, 50, 75 to it. We did this exercise a few years ago, but of course some of that information has changed now, and we would have to go back through that process to really be able to give you the type of information that will help you to determine if you want to change those master plan principles, especially when you start talking about the size of the schools. And one of the things that the board could do, certainly if you're not taking any action on this now, but you're wanting us to begin to look at long-term the master plan principles, that's something we can do. It does not get in the way of the bond committee doing their work, because they should not be trying to change the master plan principles. That is a board's decision, and the board would gather whatever input they would need in order to make that decision.
Thank you, Dr. Randall. I guess the only problem I had with it was once you start changing some of those principles as far as size of the school, then you do change the cost of the school and the cost of the land. And so then that means the bond committee might have to leave more money per school if that's what something we would have to be looking at. But long down the road. But you're saying that if we leave it like it is now, but we could always start the process. I remember a few years ago, you put a survey out, I believe, about this. And then I think this was one of a main concern during the strategic plan process, if I'm correct.
That's correct. And we've had conversations about schools, everything from at one point, we were wanting to do away with 6th grade campuses. And then when the community was surveyed, they let us know real quick that they wanted to maintain 6th grade campuses. So something like this would require some input so that the board members would be really making a decision as representative of what the community as well as what this board wants to do with the school campuses moving forward.
And I think, Mr. Welch, I think your concern was now that we're adding pre-K to most of our schools, full-time pre-K, are we going to be taxing the schools? And I didn't know if there's been looked at that, if that's something that's going to be a possibility for the coming few years when we start having full-time pre-K.
That is what initiated all this in my head. Someone actually suggested that to me, and I thought that was worth pursuing. I do not want to haphazardly go about changing these numbers tonight, on the fly and like, oh, let's just add 50 here and 100 there. That's not my intent for pulling this. But my intent is also, we don't always just want to keep just approving it and going on to the next one and saying, oh yeah, someday we're going to come back and we're going to dig into some of these. Like the other night, one of my fellow trustees suggested, do we still need number 4? We could, and when would those discussions ever happen if we're not going to have those conversations in a time like this? So it's definitely not a pressing issue, especially in light of how the fall will go because of how the spring has gone with the COVID-19. I assume the fall is going to be a little bit of makeup academically. And I know that the administration is going to be taxed in their time even more than normal. So it's not a front issue, a burner issue for me. I just think it's worth delving into and getting a representation of the public's opinion on this, as we are becoming a little bit more of a suburban district as opposed to a rural district, as Lamar has been known in the past. And I think it makes sense to bump these numbers, but I don't want to do that without some input of professionals on many different levels.
Right. And I think that's smart. And as I've read through these now, like this is my 3rd bond, and we usually delve into these pretty much before every bond and talk about it and talk about some of the same questions that you're bringing up. But that's why they have been on surveys in the past that I've been privy to. And that's why they were brought up during the, when we were doing our
Strategic plan.
I can't even talk right now. Our plan, and every meeting, it was one of the areas of concern. So, and I think even the committee brought that forth. So, but then again, every few years, you're changing our community because our community is growing. So I think you have a good point that we shouldn't just let it lie till the very next bond, but look at it as our community is growing and still get feedback on it so that the next time this comes up that we have made a good decision for that bond committee to move forward to.
Right, and I don't know, Dr. Randall, this is an issue you can put in the back of your mind, and as your staff needs something to do in the future. Because to do this, I recognize that it affects the architectural plans. And so are we going to be saying to our architects, hey, build us a bigger footprint, or are we not? So at some point, this has to be looked at and dealt with. And but it's not something that I'm asking to be done right now. But I do want the conversation to come up again. I don't want to wait till the next bond and then go, oh, well, we talked about it last bond, let's just pass it again. And and keep on going down the road.
I appreciate that. And I think we did kind of look at it before the last bond when when the bond that we changed, we did change the footprint of the school and got a new architects and came up with a new model of our schools. So, but these do raise the cost, and the more you reuse the schools, the better it is for our cost effective. But that is a good point, and I think that we do need to make sure that we don't just put it on a back burner and go, oh, look what we forgot to look at, and it's been 3 more years. So I think we need to make sure that we're meeting the community's needs and that we are also meeting the needs of our growth. So are there any other comments? Yes, Ms. Williams.
Is this something that we could add on to when we do one of our own workshops, like the board evaluation or something like that, where we discuss these as a group, because these come straight from the board? Is that something that we could do, or is that I don't know what the protocol is on that type of thing.
I'm not either. I don't know if this was a committee that formed these to begin with and brought it to the board. That might be a Dr. Randall question.
Actually, that was the master plan principles were done before I arrived in the district. And what the boards have done is that they looked at them each time, and they've only been tweaked once since I've been here. But to respond to Ms. Williams' question, I think that it probably would be more appropriate to have a discussion around these master plan principles in a workshop setting where we can present all of the information, you can pose the questions that you need, and then we can give you answers. And then, of course, if it requires, again, more information than what we did through the strategic plan, if you were wanting to be asked the questions in a specific way, that's something that could be done as well.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm sure that somewhere we have some of the information from the strategic plan meetings and what they gave to when, I think, were you on that committee, Ms. Williams?
Yes.
And so that information was probably given to you. What was gleaned from all those 10 meetings that we did throughout the
it's on
district.
the website as well. So I don't know. I believe all the details that I have are on the website as well. Okay. So yeah, I think all of that work can definitely be used to go towards this list.
And I think you'd feel more comfortable if in the future, if we could do a workshop, go through it and know that we are being, that everything is contemporary and up to date. And then you'd feel more comfortable the next time this comes around voting on the master plan principles. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments on these at this time? Well, if not, I'm going to call for the vote. All right.
Ms. Danziger, there is no need.
Oh, there's no vote. We didn't make, you're right. We didn't make, I'm getting so in the habit. You're right. We didn't have to have a motion, so we don't have to have a vote. Yay. All right. So let's move on to, I think it was B21. I believe it's consider approval of expanding our community eligible provision. If I'm correct on that.
That's correct.
Okay, I'm trying to, do I hear a motion?
Kaminsky will make the motion.
Okay, that we are going to, okay, the motion is the number of campuses participating in the community eligibility provision to include 6 additional designated campuses. Ms. Kaminsky makes the motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Bronzell made the second. Now we can have discussion.
I want the public to understand this. This is about children eating in the schools and whether or not, I don't know the proper way to phrase it, whether or not they pay or whether or not we are reimbursed for their meal by the federal government. First off, I want everybody to know, I have children and I was a child at one time. I want every child's belly to be full every day. I think it's, this is not a question. The emotional reaction is how could you possibly not want to provide meals for children? And that is not the issue here. It's not about whether children are eating or not eating. They're going to eat. To me, it's not. I'm trying to take away the emotion of it and look at it from use my mind and not my heart here, because they're going to eat anyway. This is a matter of, are the parents, are the adults being held responsible? That's how I look at it. And I know this is kind of like trying to light a fire outside during a hurricane, pushing against the federal government being the hurricane with the way they just dispense money. But I think it's important to take a stand and to make parents be responsible enough to fill out a form. And if they don't, and their children will still eat, and we could use local funds or possibly get lunches of love to donate the money, or a church organization or something. But now, let me just say this. Last year when I was on the board for like 5 seconds, this same issue came up. And I voted to not include those schools. And somebody went and found my address and sent me an anonymous hate letter that I want to hold up to here. I'm kind of proud of this, except for the fact that they didn't put their name on it, and they chastised me for my faith. They chastised me for my political beliefs. And if that same person is listening right now, I would love to have coffee with you and discuss this, civilly. We can disagree, but please, no one send me any more anonymous hate mail without putting your name on it. And I've actually shown this letter to 2 of my fellow trustees here, and I'm willing to show it to anybody else who would like to read it.
Are there any other questions or comments about this? Were there any that we had asked some questions, I think, the other night? Did we get of Ms. Williams?
Mr. Junty and Ms. Tomas and Ms. Ludwig were very kind, and we had a 45-minute briefing today on this item, and so they filled me in on all the questions that I had. So I don't have any further questions this evening. So they were very gracious and took the time to go through with me, so I have a good understanding.
Thank you. Are there anybody else that would like to make a question or comment about this agenda item at this time?
I have a question.
Yes.
I still don't understand the 3 tiers, those that pay, the reduced pay, and then those that do not pay at all. I don't feel like I got an answer for the reduced pay. Do we or do we not have that portion in the program?
So you're asking what the eligibility is for reduced, for someone to get on reduced lunch?
Well, what my understanding is now, either everybody gets free lunches or only the 40% do.
So if it turns to a CEP school, that would be everyone would get free lunches at that school.
And if it does not, then you will have to decide, look at the incomes and decide who does not.
Right.
That will involve the parents having to fill out the forms.
Right. Correct.
Okay. I do tend to agree a little bit with John in that I think parents do need to be a little bit more responsible. And by doing that, I think that the paperwork should be done. There should be some way that they understand what they're filling out and why. I don't think there should be any stigma to that, because the kids will be fed no matter what. I do have a concern about no accountability.
They still will be required to fill out paperwork with their at the beginning of the year.
Okay.
Just not for the lunches.
So then you're still tracking them.
Okay.
You're still tracking these people.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, I guess as a first grade teacher, when I walked in the cafeteria and you'd see a child sitting there that had a brown bag that might have half a sandwich and maybe a bag of chips, and you went into the lunchroom and got them a milk because they didn't even have something to drink. Some parents might not have qualified, and that's the best they can give their kid. And you're always going to have those children that even if you could give them free lunch, they're not going to go touch that cafeteria food with a 10-foot pole. So, you know, you've got that realm. You're still going to have children bringing their lunch. I think the reason I like this program, one, is because it does take the stigma away from the children that are in the junior high and high school, because somehow children do find out. I think before we started this program, it was brought to us that some children were bumming food from other children. And I don't know if that's still happening or not. And I think it's, to me, it's, and I think you said to us the other night, it's actually more than 40%, but that's the federal government's bottom line is. But we're coming in probably over that, and we have no idea where these students will be falling once school starts again after this coronavirus, and where their families are. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. So that's just my 2 cents worth, but again, I am a bleeding heart because I've watched those kids over the years. All right, let's, any other questions or comments on this?
Madam President, can I make some comments?
Yes, you may.
So I agree with you in that when I was teaching and then students that I've represented, the reason that I support programs like this is that there's a stigma that's felt by a lot of students who receive free and reduced lunch meals. And programs like this tear down that stigma because all the children in the school have the opportunity to get a free breakfast and lunch. They're not different from the other kids. So I've spoken with students who I've represented who are eligible for free meals, and they often opt out. They opt not to eat because of the way they could be perceived or the way they think they will be perceived. And there's data to back that up too, that a lot of kids that are considered low income don't eat breakfast, and even if they receive free and reduced lunch, they don't take advantage of it for that very reason, and that has a real effect on students' mental and physical well-being and on their student achievement as well inside the classroom. The second reason that I support it, though, is we were talking a little bit about the income guidelines and those students that are on the cusp. And so I went to the Federal Register and I looked up what the income guidelines were for 2019-2020. And if a family of four is making $33,476, then they wouldn't qualify for free lunch. And so I'm not concerned about the families that are making $200,000, and they can certainly afford to send their kids with a meal. I think that they should, certainly be held accountable, and that folks should, if they can, give the applications. But I'm concerned for that family that's making just above the threshold. And these are relatively high poverty schools where 40% or more of the students qualify for free and reduced lunch because they're directly certified by the state. And so you can be sure that there will be more students that will qualify if they submitted applications, and even more that don't qualify, but it's still a struggle on that family income to pay for a meal. So you may also have students that choose which meal they want that day, breakfast or lunch. So my concern is those students that don't necessarily qualify, in addition to the stigma, but those that are just on the cusp and would really benefit from this program.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Is there anyone else at this time? Well, if not, then I'm going to call for the vote. All right. Trustee Bronzell?
Yes.
Trustee Hubenek? Yes. I don't hear you. Trustee Hunt?
Yes.
Trustee Kaminsky?
Yes.
Trustee Welch?
Oh.
No. Trustee Williams?
Yes.
Yes. And myself, yes. The motion carries 6-1. Thank you. All right. By my calculations, I think we have gone through all our pulled agenda items. Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, at this time, we do have some information items. And in the information part of our board book, we have the report on board member training. And if you'll indulge me for just a few minutes, I'm going to read this report. As board president, I am required to announce the name of each member who, as of that member's anniversary of election or appointment to the board, has completed the required continuing education, has exceeded the required continuing education, and is deficient in meeting the required continuing education. There are 4 tiers or categories of board members' continuing education. Tier 1, local district orientation, basic legal orientation, and legal update training. Tier 2, team building training with all board members and the superintendent. Tier 3, annual continuing education. And Tier 4, evaluating and improving student outcomes. To the extent applicable to board members under legal requirements for the 4 tiers, I will announce the completion or deficiency as to required training. At the conclusion of this announcement, I will announce any board members training in excess of the continuing education requirements. For Tier 1 orientation and legal update training, the following local district orientation training, the following first-year board members have completed Tier 1 local district orientation: Alex Hunt, John Welch, Joy Williams. Basic orientation legal training, the following first-year board members have completed the Tier 1 basic orientation training regarding the Texas Education Code and relevant legal obligations: Alex Hunt, John Welch, Joy Williams. Legal update training. The following board members have completed Tier 1 legal updated to the Texas Education Code relevant legal developments after the most recent legislative session: Mandy Bronzell, Kay Danziger, Joe Hubenek, Catherine Kaminsky. For Tier 2 team building training, the following board members have completed the required team building training: Mandy Bronzell, Kay Danziger, Joe Hubenek, Alex Hunt, Catherine Kaminsky, John Welch, Joey Williams. Tier 3, annual continuing education. The following board members have completed Tier 3 annual continuing education requirements: Mandy Bronzell, Kay Danziger, Joe Hubenek, Alex Hunt, Catherine Kaminsky, John Welch, Joy Williams. Tier 4, evaluating and improving student outcomes training. The following board members have completed the required training for Tier 4, evaluating and improving student outcomes: Mandy Bronzell, Kay Danziger, Joe Hubenek, Alex Hunt, Catherine Kaminsky, John Welch, Joy Williams. Exceeding required continuing education. Board member Mandy Bronzell exceeded the required amount of required continuing education training by 10.23 additional hours. Board member Kay Danziger exceeded the required amount of required continuing education training by 19.50 additional hours. Board member Joe Hubenek exceeded the required amount of required continuing education training by 8.48 additional hours. Board member Alex Hunt exceeded the required amount of required continuing education training by 5.50 additional hours. Board member Catherine Kaminsky exceeded the required amount of required continuing education training by 10.99 additional hours. Board member John Welch exceeded the required amount of required continuing education training by 5.50 additional hours. And board member Joy Williams exceeded the required amount of required continuing education training by 10 additional hours. So our 2019-2020 board is definitely exceeds expectations board. Congratulations to all. Okay. All right. Are there any other information items that you would like to revisit tonight? All right, seeing none, it'll be time to go to closed session. We're going to adjourn to closed session pursuant to the Texas Government Code sections 551.071, 551.072, 551.074, and 551.082, the Opens Meeting Act, for the following purposes. The time is now 8:20. Okay, it is now 9:20, and we are back from closed session. The board will ask for motions on closed session items. Do I have a motion? Is there a motion?
Yes, Kay, I just lost contact one moment.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Kaminsky.
Madam Chairman, I move that the Board of Trustees approve the renewal of contracts for professionals, teachers, and support personnel.
Thank you. Do I have a second to that motion? Name and, okay, Ms. Williams seconds it.
Williams, second.
Is there any discussion? All right, I'm going to do a roll call vote. Ms. Trustee Bronzell? Trustee Hubenek?
Yes.
You can say aye.
Aye.
Trustee Hunt?
Yes.
Trustee Kaminsky?
Yes.
Trustee Welch?
Yes.
Trustee Williams?
Aye.
And Board President says aye, so the motion passes. Do I have another motion from closed session?
Madam Chairwoman, I move that the Board of Trustees approve the recommendation of Dallas Warren as the Chief of Police.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second? Mr. Hubenek seconds it. Again, I will have a roll call vote. Please say yay or nay. Ms. Bronzell? Ms. Bronzell? I can't hear you. I'm sorry. Mr. Hubenek?
Nay.
Excuse me?
Nay.
Nay. All right. Mr. Hunt?
Yes.
Ms. Kaminsky?
Yes.
Mr. Welch?
No.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
And President, yes. So the motion carries 5-2. Do we have any other motions that need to be made?
Madam Chairwoman, the Board of Trustees approve the recommendation of Sestra Kai Johnson as the campus coordinator for Lamar Consolidated High School.
Do I have a second for that?
Second it.
Ms. Bronzell seconds it. Do we have any discussion? All right, we will have a roll call vote. Ms. Bronzell?
Yes.
Mr. Hubenek? Yes. Mr. Hunt?
Yes.
Ms. Kaminsky?
Yes.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Trustee Williams?
Yes.
And myself, yes, so the motion passes. So I think we have one more.
Yes, Madam Chairman, I move that the Board of Trustees accept the superintendent's recommendation to terminate the probationary contract of Shakiri Lede, finding it to be in the district's best interest.
All right. Do I have a second?
Second.
Who was that, Mr. Welch?
Yes, John Welch.
Okay. Are there any discussion? All right. Roll call vote. Ms. Bronzell?
Yes.
Mr. Hubenek?
Yes.
Yes. Ms. Trustee Hunt?
Yes.
Trustee Kaminsky?
Yes.
Trustee Welch?
Yes.
Trustee Williams?
Yes.
And myself, yes. So the motion passes. I think that's all the what we took from closed session. Thank you very much. At this time, we will work towards our May agenda. Do we have any future agenda items or information items you would like to see on next month's agenda? All right, hearing none. Do we have any upcoming events or meetings that we need to announce? Besides the fact they roped me into doing a webinar tomorrow morning at 11:30. If you wish to watch for the Fort Bend Chamber of Commerce, I will be speaking about our district and what it's doing for the coronavirus and what our future is for our district. So grab a lunch. Don't laugh at me too much. And I will be there. It's supposed to be from 11:30 to 1, but I will probably not go till, I'll probably talk for 45 minutes, if that long. So, and then you can ask questions. Is there anything else? Anything else from you, Dr. Randall?
No, ma'am.
All right. So in that case, at 9:25, the meeting is adjourned.